No matter how abysmal a movie is, there are often some redeeming qualities. But every now and then you'll watch a film that's atrocious from start to finish, save for one scene. Because of how thrilling, emotional and hilarious these scenes are, it's genuinely frustrating that they're trapped in such a god-awful movie. So with that in mind then, Whatculture here with perfect scenes in god-awful movies. The tripod attack in War of the Worlds. With Tom Cruise playing the lead in Steven Spielberg's adaptation of one of H.G. Wells' most influential stories, it sounded like War of the Worlds couldn't fail. But due to the uneven tone, forced family drama, and an annoyingly abrupt ending, few were bowled over by this blockbuster. Also, how did Robbie survive that explosion near the end? This plot hole still bothers me. Fortunately, the story's centerpiece, the alien invasion itself, is as chilling as you'd expect. After an EMP hits a town, Ray and his family walk towards an intersection, gawking in horror at the source of the signal. With little warning, a Martian ship bursts from the ground and begins reducing everything to ash with a high-powered energy weapon. Ray and his family dive into their car and drive off, while the tripod's lasers hurl trucks into houses and rip freeways to shreds. As delightfully well shot and edited as this scene is, there's one simple detail that really sells it: the sound. Or more accurately, the lack of sound. Once the tripod appears, there's no dialogue, no witty banter, no monologues, no cheesy one-liners, there's barely any music. Watching this colossal automaton in pure silence just before it obliterates the town makes the scene far more gripping.
Live Aid, Bohemian Rhapsody. While there's no real arguing against just how damn impressive Rami Malek's Oscar-winning transformation into the iconic Queen frontman Freddie Mercury was, when it comes to the film playing host to his excellent work, most would confess to the biopic being pretty bang average at best. The fact many were quick to complain about the way it was generally rather shoddily put together, with the film's editor John Ottman even admitting to wanting to put a bag over his head after not being satisfied with the editing seen in the moment the band meet up with their soon-to-be manager in particular, made its eventual Oscar win for best editing even more baffling too. But away from the editing and directing missteps, Malek's performance was given one hell of a moment to shine during a sequence many would argue was up there with the 2010s most impactful, fully capturing the essence of Queen's simply iconic 1985 Live Aid showing from start to finish. Whilst brilliantly diving into the note-perfect performance given by Malek and the rest of the band throughout, the rest of Bohemian Rhapsody may be a largely paint-by-numbers and somewhat forgettable affair, but this recreation of music history was about as epic as it gets.
Jay's montage is comedy gold in The Inbetweeners 2. The Inbetweeners movie was better than many were expecting. Nevertheless, it didn't need a follow-up, which is why fans of the British sitcom were dubious when The Inbetweeners 2 was announced. But after watching the sequel's first few minutes, you'd think you were about to watch a comedy classic in the making. As Will, Neil and Simon whine about their failed love lives, they receive an email from Jay, who's living in Australia. We then cut to a spectacular montage where Jay alerts the lads he has become a famed, well-endowed DJ, hooked up with dozens of models and regularly dines with famous Aussies such as Steve Irwin, despite being dead, Mel Gibson dressed as William Wallace, and Hugh Jackman suited up as Wolverine. There are so many great lines and sight gags sprinkled throughout, you need to watch this scene repeatedly to get them all. But it's not just hilarious, this whole sequence is genuinely well shot. If you took all the gags out, you'd still be impressed by the phenomenal camera work and all the long takes. But because the rest of The Inbetweeners 2 is filled with idiotic jokes about poo and animal cruelty, no one would blame you for switching it off after this scene wraps up.
Spider-Man Returns, The Amazing Spider-Man 2. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 definitely had a great movie hiding in there somewhere. It's just a shame it was consistently suffocated by dubstep-wielding villains and a detrimental obsession with sequel baiting. Now sure, the unquestionably agonizing demise of Gwen Stacy still ranks right up there as one of the most heartbreaking and masterfully performed moments of superhero tragedy ever committed to screens. But that wasn't the only perfect occurrence to be found in this hugely disappointing one-time end to Andrew Garfield's time in the legendary suit. After suffering that life-changing loss late on, an understandably devastated Peter Parker seemingly opts to bring an end to his web-slinging days. but in a moment that perfectly captures the heart and soul of this adored super figure, and the reason he continues to inspire and remain relevant all these years later, Spidey simply can't help but throw back on the mask when his city needs him most. Motivated by his beloved's moving graduation speech, Spidey resumes looking out for the little guy in triumphant fashion, protecting a small child with his typical charm as he collides with the Rhino to bring the general dud to an end with one of the Spider-Man movie world's greatest closing shots.
The intro in Valerian and the City of 1,000 Planets. Although Luc Besson hoped Valerian and the City of 1,000 Planets would be a sci-fi extravaganza, it was completely forgettable. In fact, it's very possible you watched it and already forgot the plot and the characters' names. You probably don't even recall Rihanna had a whole song and dance number. But one thing that should be locked in viewers' memory banks permanently is how Valerian begins. In the preamble, we see the world leaders have made peace with one another, encouraging every space agency to attach their satellites to the International Space Station, allowing astronauts from all nations to work together in harmony. As humanity comes into contact with alien life, extraterrestrials merge their spaceships with the ISS as a sign of peace. After several centuries, over 1,000 worlds have meshed their vessels to Earth's satellite, transforming the ISS into a galactic city populated with millions of species from across the cosmos. Even though it's difficult to devise a fictional universe in sci-fi without relying on exposition dumps, Valerian's intro executes it perfectly without a word of dialogue. Sadly, this is a perfect example of a director who put his best ideas in one scene. Once the plot kicks off, Valerian becomes another bland schlockfest, failing to emulate 1/10 of the prologue's artistry.
Bond vs. Batista, Spectre. Between its general poor usage of the brilliance of Christoph Waltz in the lead Bond villain role, and desperately lacking the emotional weight of the prior masterful Skyfall entry, the attempt to infuse the shadowy Spectre organisation into this particular 007 arc felt like an all-round step in the wrong direction. There was a glimmer of what fans had come to adore about Craig's hard-hitting iteration of the iconic MI6 agent to be found in the middle of the often unimaginative 2015 flick though, and it all came whilst enjoying a tipple on a train, ambushed by one of the feature's only real consistent highlights in the form of Dave Bautista's silent force of nature, Hinx. Bond well and truly meets his physical match on the speeding locomotive. The entire brawl bursts into the scenario like an unexpected brick to the skull, and every subsequent brutal thump, knee and throw feels like something properly capable of breaking the average civilian in half. It's gritty, uncompromising, and legitimately feels less stylish choreographed skirmish and more genuine struggle for survival, and I challenge you to find a better fight-ending piece of dialogue than Mr. Hinx's defeated as he's suddenly yanked off the vehicle at full speed.
Sub-Zero kills Scorpion's family in Mortal Kombat. After the Mortal Kombat trailer blew us all away, any cynicism for this video game adaptation seemed to vanish overnight. Just when the fanbase thought they couldn't be more pumped to see this gore-riddled reboot, the opening scene was released online just before the film's official launch. This overture shows retired ninja Hanzo Hasashi trying to live in peace with his wife and child. But after his old clan track him down, Hanzo engages in a mercilessly bloody battle, which concludes with himself and his family being murdered by his rival, Sub-Zero. This 7-minute scene is filled with enough blood and guts to whet our appetite, and yet it's Hanzo's heartbreak after discovering his family's frozen corpses that leaves us reeling. Because of how flawless this scene is, many went into Mortal Kombat expecting more of the same. Instead, we were met with a weak story, ridiculous plot holes, and a boring protagonist. Also, the fact that there's no Mortal Kombat tournament in a movie called Mortal Kombat is false advertising. The bloodshed is deservingly creative, and Josh Lawson steals the show as Kano, but the movie takes a noticeable dip in quality elevator in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Although Jonathan Liebesman was the director of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles reboot, you can tell it was produced by Michael Bay. The film is riddled with so much product placement and juvenile jokes, it was obvious the Transformers director had a firm grip on the production. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Due to the atrocious redesign of the Turtles, the absurd plot and the distracting reshoots, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles failed to please the biggest fans of the heroes in a half shell. However, there's one scene that perfectly captures the essence absence of Leonardo, Michelangelo, Raphael, and Donatello. While the reptilian siblings take the elevator to face the Shredder, Mikey starts drumming with his nunchucks. At first, you assume his brothers will scold him. Instead, they gradually join in, beatboxing and clanging their weapons to harmonize with MC Mikey. If this moment was mishandled, it could have come across as pure cringe. Instead, it demonstrates how the Ninja Turtles still act like playful teenagers, even before charging into the biggest fight of their lives. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles definitely had some funny moments and innovative battles, but it's this 39-second snippet that people remember most fondly.
The Pirate Lords are summoned, Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End. The third outing for Captain Jack Sparrow and co., and ultimately the most disappointing of the initial trilogy, set sail with one of the most gripping opening sequences you'll ever likely find in a Disney summer blockbuster. Setting the rest of the eventual hit-and-miss 169-minute swashbuckler in motion, this first scene sees Lord Cutler Beckett going out of his way to execute each and every person in Port Royal who is associated with anything to do with piracy. And it's that chilling scenario which gives birth to the equally unsettling sound and sight of these doomed souls singing a song by the name of Hoist the Colours, as they ask the Pirate Lords to come together and take down the East India Trading Company. At World's End may be missing much of the unexpected charm of the earlier Pirates' adventures, and suffers from an often far too convoluted plot. But this utterly eerie opening stretch, one equipped with the harrowing visual of a young child kicking off the sea shanty in question pre-hanging, is the Caribbean series at its provoking and poignant best.
Burn unit scene in Shallow Hal. In Shallow Hal, Jack Black plays a hopeless romantic who won't settle for any woman who isn't drop-dead gorgeous. When life coach Tony Robbins sees how deluded Hal is, he hypnotizes him to only see women's inner beauty. Shortly after, he falls for a wonderful woman called Rosemary, oblivious to the fact that she's 300 pounds, which is fine. Shallow Hal has a nice premise, but is let down by uncreative jabs at the plus-size community. No matter how creative the jokes are, it gets tiresome since most of them boil down to "you're fat." However, there's one moment that isn't just touching, but heart-wrenching. When Hal visits Rosemary at the hospital she volunteers at, he meets a little girl called Cadence. He immediately warms to her, telling Cadence how beautiful she is, joking that she shouldn't be at the hospital since she's pretending to be sick. But after the hypnotism spell wears off, he sees Cadence again, only to realise she's a burn victim. Not only is this a clever twist, it's this moment where Hal realises how wrong he's been to judge people for their appearance. If the movie had more harrowing scenes like this, Shallow Hal would have been better remembered.
Wolverine gets his adamantium claws. X-Men Origins Wolverine. The complete misfire of a picture that was X-Men Origins Wolverine sits alongside the likes of Dark Phoenix and New Mutants as one of the worst received mutant movies of all time. But there were a few beats amidst the regularly painful experience that reminded folks why they were so damn excited about this supposed Wolverine solo story coming in. Alongside the outstanding brothers battling through the ages opening sequence, which is still among the greatest superhero openings of all time, the birth of an adamantium sporting Logan is about as pitch perfect a sequence as the X-Men series has ever produced. After seeing the odd glimpse of a feral Wolvie being let loose with his new toys for the first time in prior entries, the agonizing procedure involving this indestructible metal being drilled into his skeleton is finally realized in all its brutal glory. And it does not disappoint. Then, once the wince-inducing skull piercing is finally done, the mighty Hugh Jackman is afforded yet another captivating berserker moment of madness, unleashing a magnificent slow-mo roar before taking a bullet to the head like a champ and quickly slicing his way out of dodge. From there, it's back to dodgy CGI and mouthless Deadpools naturally.
Silver Surfer's arrival in Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. It sounds impossible to direct a boring movie about a quartet of superheroes battling a planet-gobbling alien. But somehow, director Tim Story found a way to make Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer more dreary than its predecessor. Even though Galactus is one of the most powerful entities in Marvel, the movie screwed him up. Beloved supervillain Dr. Doom is reduced to a pantomime baddie who churns out one-liners. The only saving grace this Doom sequel has to offer is the Silver Surfer. Even though the cosmic being's powers are god god tier, the character could have been ruined if the film didn't demonstrate his abilities appropriately. Luckily, we got to see what the Surfer is capable of in his first scene. After the Intergalactic Herald crashes the wedding of Reed Richards and Sue Storm, Johnny Storm flies after him. As the Chrome Dome alien effortlessly wades through the city, Johnny tries to keep up. As the Human Torch is about to reach him, the Silver Surfer catches him by the throat, soars into space, and tosses his body back to the Earth. This scene was so awesome it was used for the film's teaser, and is regarded as one of the best trailers ever.
Duel of the Fates, Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. For every frustrating spell spent squabbling within the Galactic Senate, or watching Jar Jar Binks bumble through a battlefield, there was at least the odd epic lightsaber duel in The Phantom Menace that reminded you precisely why you fell in love with this world of space wizards and stormtroopers in the first place. The frankly superhuman displays practically brought to life throughout in Ewan McGregor, Liam Neeson and Ray Park's explosive battle between the forces of good and evil was already pretty damn spellbinding. Add into that the musical masterpiece that is John Williams' mesmerizing Duel of the Fates tune, and you have one of the most iconic sequences ever to grace the galaxy far, far away. And if the out-of-this-world swordplay and generational scoring wasn't enough for you, the emotional and literal gut punch / stab that is the sight of Qui-Gon Jinn being suddenly cut down before his helpless Padawan's eyes is the sort of undeniably traumatic occurrence that also helped elevate this great climactic battle to the level of all-timer.
The titular fight is genuinely amazing in Godzilla vs. Kong. After the success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Legendary Pictures was inspired to create their own shared universe series, centering around iconic monsters like Godzilla and King Kong. Sadly, the first 3 installments of this monsterverse underperformed, financially and critically. Because these movies were all building to Godzilla vs. Kong, the studio hoped this monstrous crossover would turn the tide of the franchise. But due to terrible writing, plot holes galore, and an absurd story revolving an alien skull that mind controls a robot, it was no surprise the sequel was a letdown. But man, did Godzilla vs. Kong deliver with its titular fight. You can imagine how hyped kaiju fans were to see this showdown. And yet it exceeded all expectations. Although we were expecting an epic brawl, we weren't prepared to be this emotionally invested. Because Kong is the underdog for the entire fight, you can't help rooting for him. Even though it's marvelous to watch the towering lizard and gigantic ape smashing neon skyscrapers while they wail on each other, it's the desperation in Kong's face as he barely dodges his rival's assault that makes this battle a wonder to behold.
Venom sizes up Spidey, Venom Let There Be Carnage. It tells you all you need to know about the quality of a superhero sequel when the most captivating element on show pops up once the main portion of the action has mercifully come to an end. And that's precisely what went down during 2021's clunky CGI-stuffed follow-up to Tom Hardy's first Venom outing. With this instantly forgettable entry seeing Eddie Brock and his symbiote mate going through a rough patch before locking horns with Woody Harrelson's kooky Cletus Cassidy / Carnage. While the climactic battle of the gooey forces may have been a bit of a drag, and a lot of the campy charm wasn't quite as unexpectedly funny this time around though, Let There Be Carnage did at least come with one of the most exciting mid-credit teases in superhero movie history. With both Eddie and Venom enjoying a bit of time out on vacation, their room suddenly begins to shake and flicker, and before they know what in the holy hell is going on, Venom soon clocks a rather familiar spider on the TV screen, slapping his iconic tongue on the set, in what likely mirrored the reaction of many a Spider fan licking their lips at the concept of Hardy's Venom finally colliding with Tom Holland's web-slinger. That disappointingly didn't ultimately come to pass in No Way Home, of course, but that doesn't change the fact that this masterfully executed post-credit sequence managed to conjure up a frankly absurd amount of hype for the Spider-Man film Pteranodon Cage Chaos Jurassic Park 3. Jurassic Park 3 provided the blueprint of exactly what not to do when unleashing prehistoric chaos on the big screen. Gone was the wonder and genuinely unsettling moments involving everything from gigantic T-Rexes to raptors hunting down our protagonists. In its place were surreal moments of unintentional hilarity in the form of talking animatronic dino heads and generally predictable scares for the most part. That being said, there was actually a single sequence contained within the 90-minute Golden Raspberry nominee that did feel like the Jurassic franchise was hitting some of its frightening unsettling form of old. I'm talking about that horrifying sequence which finally sees the series embrace the skies somewhat, with the likes of Alan Grant and co being forced to come face to face with some Pteranodons when attempting to pass through an Avery. The way the Misty Bridge quivers the second the group realise they're not alone evokes the similar unsettling feeling that came about after seeing the unforgettable glass of water shake back in 1993, and the silhouette of the terrifying winged dino slowly wandering towards a spooked Eric, combined with Billy ridiculously parasailing in to save the day, helped forge a moment that is equal parts perfectly outrageous and legitimately disturbing as the latter is picked at by the pissed off dino birdies.
Quicksilver in X-Men Apocalypse. By introducing the X-Men's deadliest adversary, X-Men Apocalypse looked like it had the potential to be the most epic superhero movie ever. But due to aching runtime, excessive CGI, and an awful-looking villain, we got another disappointing X-Men threequel, which is a joke the movie itself points out. If it wasn't for the scene revolving around Quicksilver, Apocalypse would have been a 144-minute snooze fest. Although we've seen the fastest mutant alive save the day at breakneck speed in X-Men Days of Future Past, this dull follow-up dials everything up to 11. After Apocalypse blows up the X-Mansion, it looks like the X-Men are done for, but a few milliseconds before the building goes up in smoke, the silver-haired speedster zips through the X-Men's home, hurling the students outside to safety. As creative as this premise is, it's Evan Peters' playful charisma that makes this scene iconic. While watching the young actor moonwalking, surfing on a table, and rescuing a pizza-chomping dog while fire flurries around him, it's impossible not to be wowed over. With Eurythmics' Sweet Dreams Are Made of This playing throughout, you can't watch this scene without a smile on your face. But as soon as this rescue sequence comes to an end, the film goes right back to being a forgettable, bloated mess. At least it was good while it lasted.